In Brooklyn, there's a bartender named Bob. He's quiet, kind of closed off, and lives alone. Bob works at a small bar, owned by his cousin. The bar isn't just a regular drinking spot, because it's often used as a drop point for illegal money by the Chechen mafia.
The drop bar next week.
Bob's life is pretty flat, calm, but also feels empty and repetitive. One night at the bar, Bob sees a group of men gathered, remembering their friend Richie Whelan, whose murder case has never been solved since Glory Day. Maybe wanting to show some empathy, Bob buys them drinks for free. But Cousin quickly pulls him aside and scolds him. Cousin reminds Bob not to give out free drinks carelessly, especially to people like a local old woman who almost never pays, but still comes every night and spends hours at the bar. Bob actually feels sorry for the old woman. He sees the loneliness in her and tries to convince Cousin to go easier on her, but it doesn't work. After his shift ends, Bob closes the bar and walks home. He enjoys the quiet night, like always, alone with his thoughts. A few days later, on Sunday, Bob goes to church. He sits in the back row, follows the mass without much expression, then leaves without talking to anyone. That's always his routine. One night after work, while walking home, Bob hears a strange sound. He stops and tries to find where it's coming from. The sound leads him to a trash can in the yard of a house. When Bob opens it, he's shocked to see a small dog, badly injured, curled up and whining. While Bob is looking at the dog, a woman comes out of the house. Her name is Nadia. She looks cautious and asks what Bob is doing in her yard. But once she sees the condition of the dog, her attitude changes. Nadia lets Bob bring the dog into her apartment. Inside, Nadia quickly cleans the dog's wounds and bandages it. She explains that she used to work at an animal shelter, so she's used to handling situations like that.
Summer is attack. Hardest breed.
Afterward, Nadia even prepares some supplies like a box, toys, and dog food for Bob, so he can take care of it for a while. But Bob looks unsure. He's not used to that kind of responsibility, and leaves the dog with Nadia, planning to come back the next day to pick it up.
Thank you. Right.
The next day at the bar, Bob tells Cousin about the dog he found. He admits he's confused and feels overwhelmed, not sure if he's capable of taking care of it or not. Cousin reacts casually. He looks a bit amused, seeing Bob, who's usually calm, acting like that. To him, it's just a dog, nothing to overthink. Cousin tells Bob to relax more and go with what feels right to him. Meanwhile, outside the bar, two robbers named Fitz and Brele sit across the street. They watch the bar calmly, as if they've already planned something.
The owners respond. So that's what we'll see.
That night, after all the customers leave, the two of them go in and immediately rob the bar. Cousin has no choice but to follow their orders. He empties the cash register and hands over the money. After the robbers leave, Cousin and Bob quickly look for Rardy. They find him badly beaten. Without wasting time, they immediately call the police and an ambulance. The police arrive, and one of the detectives recognizes Bob from church. His name is Detective Torres, an NYPD detective. Torres starts interrogating Bob. In his statement, Bob mentions that one of the robbers was wearing a broken watch. Torres is quite surprised by the small detail Bob noticed. He writes it down, then continues the investigation. However, the situation doesn't help much. The security cameras around the place turn out to be not working. They were only installed as a formality, not actually for surveillance. Since there are no additional leads, Torres eventually ends the interrogation and leaves. As soon as they're alone, Cousin immediately scolds Bob. He feels Bob talked too much to the police. Cousin then explains that they were actually lucky. The Chechen mafia's money had already been taken before the robbery happened. But still, since the bar is now under their control, there will definitely be consequences.
So we're not so fucking okay.
That night, the two of them close the bar feeling uneasy and go home. The next morning, Bob goes to Nadia's place to pick up the dog. Even though he's still unsure, he still comes. Nadia looks excited and immediately gets into Bob's car.
Good luck.
They go together to a pet store to buy the supplies they need. There, Nadia helps Bob choose various necessities. Bob also finally names the dog Rocco. They even make a collar with that name. Nadia also suggests a book, so Bob can learn how to properly take care of a dog. After that, Bob takes Nadia home, thanks her, then heads back home. Bob starts trying to make Rocco feel comfortable in his new place. One morning, the atmosphere changes when Chovka, the head of the Chechen mafia, comes to the bar. He wants to show his power. Chovka shows a man tied up inside a van, a victim of failing to follow his orders. Without much small talk, Chovka immediately asks about the robbery. He's disappointed because Cousin and Bob don't have any information about the culprits. Even so, he still gives a harsh warning before leaving.
I wasn't.
After Chovka leaves, Cousin looks upset. He still can't accept the fact that they're now under someone else's control, no longer an important part like before.
Chechens,
Somewhere else, Detective Torres is still seriously handling the robbery case. He briefly discusses it with his colleagues, but due to procedural reasons, the case will likely be taken over by other officers.
We're not sticking our heads up to... You want them?
Meanwhile, Bob keeps living his life as usual. He doesn't seem too bothered. His days are filled with work and taking care of Rocco. Unlike Bob, Cousin tries to figure out a way out of the problem he's facing. One night, Cousin secretly meets with Fitz, one of the robbers. The meeting happens without anyone knowing.
Ambulance. Now we got an ambulance, then we got cops.
the one that had the crack.
A few days later, Nadia meets Bob and Rocco at the park. She says her working hours at the restaurant have been reduced, so now she has more free time. Because of that, she offers to help take care of Rocco while Bob is working. Bob gladly accepts the offer, and they exchange numbers.
You need it. Great.
On the other hand, at Cousin's house, Dottie, his younger sister, brings news that makes things even harder. The nursing home, where their father is being cared for, asks for unpaid bills. Their father's condition is also critical, relying on a breathing machine. If the payment isn't made soon, there's a chance he'll be moved to a worse place. Dottie even suggests something that sounds desperate, but Cousin immediately refuses. He doesn't want to give up on their father and is determined to do whatever it takes to get the money needed.
Never mind. It's okay.
One afternoon, Bob and Nadia take Rocco to the park. They train him together and spend quite a long time there. When Nadia steps away for a moment, a man named Eric suddenly approaches Bob. Without much small talk, Eric praises Rocco and then just leaves. At another time, Cousin starts feeling uneasy. When someone simply asks for directions, he immediately becomes suspicious. He thinks the Chechens have started watching him over the missing money, even though he tries to stay calm. Meanwhile, at Bob's apartment, Eric shows up in front of him. This time, Eric just walks in without permission. He claims that Rocco is his dog and says he has proof in the form of documents and an identity chip.
You told me that I had a nice looking dog, right? Account number on it. Check it out.
When Bob tries to ask further, Eric just ignores him. Eric takes an umbrella near the door and leaves, as if to show that he can do anything. That afternoon, Bob and Nadia's relationship starts to feel closer. When they meet at a restaurant, Nadia opens up a bit about her past. She says she used to be involved with drugs and often hurt herself. But now she's stopped and is trying to fix her life. Bob listens carefully and shows empathy. After that, Bob goes back to work and meets Cousin, who still looks stressed.
Guy with the umbrella. The dog.
While they're cleaning the back area of the bar, Cousin vents his frustration. He feels like he's lost control since the Chechens took over and now treat him like a regular worker. Bob tries to calm him down. He suggests Cousin accept the situation and stop thinking about the past. But their conversation stops when Bob sees something suspicious near the trash. A bag is hanging on a pole. When he checks it, Bob finds dollar bills covered in blood. Even more shocking, inside there's a human arm still wearing a broken watch, exactly like the one Bob saw on the night of the robbery. Bob shows the discovery to Cousin. Cousin's reaction immediately changes. He looks shaken and disgusted. In his mind, everything starts to fall apart. He realizes the mistake he made is coming back to haunt him. Cousin tries to calm himself. He knows if the Chechens find out about his involvement, his life won't be safe. He tries to think clearly to find a way out. Meanwhile, Bob stays calm. He takes control of the situation and says they need to return the money to the Chechens so this problem can be resolved. What shocks Cousin even more is how cold Bob handles everything. Bob neatly wraps the severed arm, like he's just cleaning up something normal, then gets ready to dispose of it. Not long after, the quiet atmosphere suddenly changes when Eric shows up at the bar and orders a drink. His arrival is clearly unusual since it's already past closing time. Cousin looks shocked. He politely refuses Eric's request and escorts him out. After the door closes, Cousin goes back inside with rising emotions. He scolds Bob for not making sure the bar was properly locked, especially since they're dealing with something very sensitive. He panics, thinking about what could have happened if Eric had seen what they were hiding. Bob, as usual, stays calm. He's not too affected by what just happened. He's actually more bothered by Eric's behavior than the situation itself. Casually, Bob assures Cousin that everything is still safe, then goes back to what he was doing. From that, Cousin starts to realize that Eric is the same person who previously demanded Rocco back. He then explains to Bob who Eric really is and warns him to be careful. Bob listens without much reaction. He doesn't fully believe the story, but in his mind, it's better to keep distance from someone like Eric, especially if it's true he was involved in bad things in the past. Without saying much, Bob finishes what he's doing. He wraps the body part they found, then goes to a nearby lake and disposes of it.
Get the ball!
Meanwhile, Cousin stays at the bar. He still looks tense. Carefully, he cleans the blood-covered money, trying to make it look normal again. On the other hand, Bob takes some time to play with Rocco, as if trying to calm his mind. Not long after, Detective Torres comes to see him. Torres talks to Bob casually, bringing up his past and also mentioning Eric's name, trying to find a possible connection to a missing person case. Bob responds calmly as usual, not revealing much. After that, Bob goes home and finds Nadia already waiting in front of his door. She plans to take Rocco for an evening walk. Bob apologizes for being late, then asks if she knows Eric. Nadia's reaction immediately changes. She admits she only knows Eric briefly, but looks uncomfortable when his name is mentioned. She even accuses Bob of interfering too much, then leaves angrily, leaving Bob still trying to understand the situation. Feeling confused about everything that happened that day, Bob goes inside. He chooses to spend time with Rocco, who has now truly become his close companion. That night, Bob goes back to work at the bar. While he's with Cousin, he tells him about the strange incident with Nadia. Cousin tries to calm him down. Some local customers who overhear also comment, joking that it might just be a normal issue between a man and a woman. But the relaxed atmosphere doesn't last long. Chovka arrives with his men. Their presence makes the other customers leave immediately, leaving Bob and Cousin facing them directly. Cousin tries to gather his courage, forcing a smile and greeting him, even reaching out for a handshake. But Chovka ignores him and focuses directly on Bob. Meanwhile, Bob stays calm. He prepares a drink as usual, then hands over the dollar money that was previously cleaned to the Chechens. He even briefly apologizes because the money is still a bit wet. Without looking nervous, Bob then offers another drink and explains confidently, as if everything is normal.
Well, it should be good company.
I have no idea what you're talking about, Mom.
On my team, before you didn't like you.
Behind him, Cousin can only stay silent, watching nervously. He doesn't understand how Bob can stay so relaxed in a situation like that, while he himself feels like he's at the edge of trouble.
All of us.
Eventually, the Chechens seem satisfied with the drinks. They get ready to leave, leaving behind a tense atmosphere inside the bar.
Okay.
Somewhere else, Detective Torres meets a local man named Jimmy. Torres tries to get information about the night Glory Day disappeared. Jimmy explains that night, Glory Day left the bar to buy weed from Eric and his friend Tim. After that, there was no more news. Torres listens seriously. He then carefully asks whether, in Jimmy's opinion, Bob and Cousin know more about the incident, but the question doesn't lead anywhere. Jimmy can't be sure, and the conversation doesn't bring any new leads.
Bar. Alright, don't fuck me. Cousin Marv's place?
That night, when Bob gets home, he finds Nadia already waiting at the door. This time, she comes to apologize for her earlier behavior. She admits that she used to be in a relationship with Eric, even though many people had already told her to stay away. The relationship eventually ended because Eric's behavior became more and more uncontrollable. Bob responds calmly. He says he doesn't really think about Nadia's past, and what happened to Rocco isn't her fault.
He used to be my boyfriend.
Sure.
That night, they spend time together. At first it feels awkward, but slowly, the conversation starts to flow. Nadia then shares more. She says that Eric is very likely involved in Glory Day's death. According to her, Eric is unpredictable and dangerous. Bob also starts to open up. He says that he and Cousin used to have their own group when they were younger. They did some small things that weren't exactly clean to make money. But all of that stopped when a bigger criminal group came and took over. Since then, Bob left that life and chose to work as a bartender. That story makes Nadia feel a bit relieved. She sees that Bob is far removed from his old life.
Why would they do that?
you said they were sisters.
Wait, no, you know.
On the other hand, Cousin meets with Fitz. Since Brielli's death, Fitz looks much more cautious. He even refuses to get into Cousin's car because he feels unsafe. Cousin, starting to get annoyed, tries to calm Fitz down. He lets Fitz check inside the car, including the back seat and the trunk, to make sure there's nothing suspicious. After being sure, Fitz finally gets into the car and they start driving. In the middle of the ride, Cousin starts talking about his plan. He says there's an opportunity on Super Bowl night to take all the Chechens' money. He sees this as a way to avenge Brielli's death. Fitz immediately refuses. He thinks the plan is too dangerous, even like a suicide mission. After everything that's happened, Fitz doesn't want to be involved anymore. Hearing that, Cousin changes his approach. He still insists on going through with the plan, with or without Fitz. He just asks Fitz to help him find a place to hide after everything is done.
Tell anybody. I'm buying something with it.
While they're still talking, suddenly, the trunk door of the car pops open. Cousin immediately blames Fitz and tells him to get out and close it properly.
No, not with me, but
Got cable?
The car stops, but what happens after that is much darker. While Fitz is at the back of the car, Cousin suddenly hits the gas in reverse and slams into him. Without hesitation, Cousin runs Fitz over until he's dead. After that, Cousin quickly gets out of the car. He leaves the vehicle behind, then runs to another car he had already prepared a few blocks away. Without looking back, Cousin immediately leaves the place. Early that morning, Bob drives Nadia home. Their goodbye feels a bit awkward, just a simple goodnight without much to say. After that, Bob heads straight home. He looks worried about leaving Rocco alone for too long. As soon as he gets home, the first thing he does is go to Rocco. He even apologizes and gives him a treat. But the atmosphere immediately changes when Bob sees something that shouldn't be there. The umbrella Eric took earlier is now lying near Rocco. Bob goes silent. He feels like he's being warned. The next day, Cousin tries to dig deeper into the connection between Eric and the situation they're facing. He meets Eric directly. Even though what Eric says doesn't fully make sense, Cousin still tries to use it. He plays it carefully, acting supportive while keeping Eric open.
And I think there's a way that you want
I don't know what I want, man.
On the other hand, Detective Torres gets Eric's psychological evaluation results from the past, from when he was once treated at an institution. Torres studies it carefully, trying to understand the man's mindset. The next morning, Bob wakes up early. He wants to talk directly to Eric to get some clarity. He goes to Eric's house. But the meeting doesn't go well. Eric treats Bob however he wants, with no respect. Even before Bob can say much, Eric already provokes him. Casually, Eric brings up the past, claims he's responsible for Glory Day's death, and insists that he's still capable of doing the same thing.
Then I'll forget to feed it for a while. I'll beat a skinhead with a rock.
A few days later, on Super Bowl day, Bob goes to Cousin's house. There, he meets Dottie, who now has to go back to work because of their financial situation. Bob then goes inside and meets Cousin. Cousin says he's not feeling well and won't be coming to the bar that night. Their conversation feels cold and uncomfortable, like there's something left unsaid.
You've been,
I depressed.
After Bob leaves, Cousin just sits there in silence. He looks like he's holding back his emotions. In his mind, he feels underestimated. He still sees himself as an important figure in that circle, and the current situation makes it hard for him to accept reality. He tries to hold himself back from acting recklessly. Meanwhile, Bob goes back home and spends some time with Rocco. After that, he gets ready to go to work. He knows that night won't be easy. Bob brings a few important things, including a gun and some cash. With Rocco by his side, he heads to the bar. Somewhere else, Eric quietly enters Nadia's house. He makes sure no one is inside, then starts acting like the place is his own. He even practices how to talk, as if preparing something to convince Nadia to follow what he wants.
Look good, by the way.
I want you to go.
At the bar, Bob stands behind the counter while watching the surroundings. He knows that night will be one of the busiest nights. Slowly, the place fills up with people who come to watch the game while drinking. The atmosphere is crowded, full of noise. Bob immediately gets busy serving orders nonstop, and, in between, he secretly handles another task. Whenever there's a chance, he takes envelopes filled with money that some people slip to him, then stores them in the safe. Everything is done without drawing attention, like it's already routine. At home, Cousin sits alone on the couch. He turns on the TV to watch the game, but his mind isn't really there. He looks restless, like he's waiting for something to happen. Back at the bar, Bob's attention is immediately drawn when Nadia walks in with Eric. He feels like something is off. He doesn't know whether Nadia came on her own or was forced. Even so, Bob chooses to stay where he is, watching from a distance without interfering. Not long after, Eric approaches the bar and orders a drink. He also tries to talk to Bob privately, bringing up money and something he wants. Their conversation is briefly interrupted by a call from Cousin, who gives Eric a warning. Cousin, who seems to be getting ready to leave the house, tells Eric to be patient and sets up a meeting after midnight.
You do the thing and then you leave. Shit you not. Do not fuck with him. You stay away from him.
After that, Cousin hangs up. At the bar, the atmosphere goes back to normal. People are still enjoying the game, while Bob keeps watching the situation. He continues doing his job, making sure all the money coming in is safely stored in the safe. After the game ends, the customers start leaving one by one. The crowd slowly fades, leaving a much quieter atmosphere. Inside the bar, only Bob, Nadia, and Eric remain. Nadia approaches Bob as if she wants to explain something, but Eric immediately interferes and shifts the conversation, pretending everything is fine between them. A moment later, Eric steps outside to take a call. Bob and Nadia use the opportunity to talk briefly.
Oh. I'm sorry, Bob.
When Eric comes back, he looks more restless. He approaches the bar and asks for another drink. Bob serves him calmly. Without saying much, Bob also hands over the $10,000 Eric asked for regarding Rocco. Eric looks relaxed while counting the money, but then he says something surprising, as if trying to show control over the situation.
Let's close it. We're looking to save it too.
Bob isn't affected. He refuses to let Eric take the Chechen's money and starts speaking in a firmer tone.
He pay for you.
Eric becomes more uneasy. He asks about Cousin's whereabouts, as if there's something he wants to do when Cousin shows up later. In the middle of that situation, Bob suddenly starts talking about Cousin's past. He reveals that about 10 years ago, Cousin once lent a large amount of money to a local young man who actually couldn't afford to pay it back. The young man then went to Atlantic City and unexpectedly won a large amount of money. He came back and paid off all his debt, but instead of ending there, Cousin saw an opportunity. He wanted to take all of that winning money to cover his own debt to the Chechens. To cover it up, Cousin tried to hide the fact that the debt had already been paid. He even involved Bob in his plan. Bob's confession leaves Nadia and Eric silent. Both of them look shocked, like they didn't expect that story to come out. But the situation becomes even more tense. Eric tries to take control and claims that he's the one responsible for Glory Day's death. He seems to want to take control that way. Before Eric can finish speaking, everything ends suddenly. Bob shoots Eric, and Nadia looks terrified. Bob then tries to explain his actions, and Nadia, still shaken, can only nod and agree with whatever he says. Carefully, Nadia asks for permission to leave. Bob allows her and assures her that she won't be hurt again. That night ends in silence, but full of things that won't be easily forgotten. Outside the bar, Cousin sits in his car, watching from a distance. He waits for news from Eric, hoping everything is going according to plan. But suddenly, he sees Nadia running out of the bar in panic. In that instant, his feelings change. He realizes something is wrong, and most likely, his plan has fallen apart. Nervously, Cousin immediately calls Bob. The call is answered quickly, but they both stay silent for a moment. It's like they understand each other without needing many words. What just happened is too heavy to say right away. Cousin eventually hangs up. He starts to panic. Inside the car, he can only sit there, feeling like everything is over. He knows the consequences of what just happened, and for the first time, he truly feels like he has no way out. Inside the bar, Bob tries to act normal. Not long after, the Chechens come to collect their money. When they walk in, they find Eric's body lying on the floor. Chovka immediately asks what happened. Bob answers calmly, saying Eric came alone, drunk, and tried to cause trouble. Without many questions, Chovka orders his men to take care of Eric's body. To him, Eric deserves that fate. After that, Chovka asks to speak with Bob privately. He reveals that he already knows about Cousin's involvement. Eric was actually working for Cousin, just like the robbers before. Chovka looks very disappointed with that betrayal. Then, in a calm tone, Chovka says something shocking. He says that Cousin has already been found and was killed before he could make it to the bar.
So I made them look nice.
Bob doesn't react much. His face stays flat, hard to read what he feels. Chovka then says that he will support Bob from now on. He even offers Bob to take over the bar and run it. Bob's name will also be used as the new identity of the place. Bob accepts all of it, without much comment. After everything is done, he goes home. That night, like usual, Bob feeds Rocco. In the middle of everything that just happened, only Rocco stays the same.
Because he knows.
A few days later, Detective Torres comes to the bar to meet Bob. He expresses his condolences for Cousin's death. Even so, he admits he doesn't fully believe the official story about what happened. Torres also brings up Eric, who is missing. He says Eric was last seen at the bar, similar to the Glory Day case before. But after further investigation, it turns out Eric was actually in a psychiatric facility on the night Glory Day disappeared. That means Eric couldn't have been the perpetrator. According to Torres, Eric only claimed responsibility to build a reputation on the streets. Bob listens to all of that without showing much reaction. He just nods, as if accepting the possibility. Before leaving, Torres gives a smile that's hard to read, then leaves the bar. A few days later, Bob brings Rocco to Nadia's house. He says he'll leave if she doesn't want to see him, but he also asks her to go for a walk with him. Nadia pauses for a moment, thinking. Then she finally agrees. She goes inside briefly to grab her jacket, while Bob waits outside, feeling a bit lighter than before.